That's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready.
Am I starting from the top? It's time for some pro football today here on SportsGrid TV, and it's not a false alarm. Football is here. NFL Week 1, baby, is in full swing, and what better matchup than to have the Ravens taking on the Chiefs. Chiefs looking to have that three-peat. Ravens looking to be taken a lot more seriously after making some pretty good off-season moves. But what's always the hottest topic when it comes to these two teams? It's their quarterbacks. It's Patrick Mahomes in his backyard football and always pulling his team through to a championship. And it's Lamar Jackson who has to find a way to push through a postseason finally. But now he's got a weapon to kind of help alleviate him, add some versatility to that offense, and serve up some different looks. So, yes, probably one of the biggest players talked about in this matchup is Derrick Henry in comparison to Mahomes and Jackson. But before we get into all of that, of course, we have to acknowledge some of the top statistics of this head-to-head matchup, and that's the fact that the Chiefs are 3-1 in the last 4 times these two teams have met, and they do very well on home turf. So what does that mean in terms of your betting angles and what you should look at tonight? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to chat with some cool guys like Adam Kaufman and Tom Vecchio and Dave Sherapen down the stretch here, so you don't want to go anywhere. But most importantly, let's lay things out for this matchup. Already mentioned, that Kansas City is 4-1 in this one, but also take a gander at this. 10-7-0 across the spread last season. So I know a lot of people are quickly laying this spread and leaning with the Chiefs, or everybody's saying the same thing. Who wants to bet against Patrick Mahomes? But I don't think it's going to be that simple. I also look at how week 1 went down for the Chiefs in the past 2 seasons, and I think we should all keep an eye on that. But we will break that down even further. I will say this. Kansas City also has a 9-4 record last year when playing as a money line favorite at minus 155 or shorter. So something else to gauge if you're not really loving this spread. This is one of those games that can either stay within that touchdown era or it can go even further and get pretty messy. But I think things are going to be a little bit more neck and neck. There's a couple of things heading into this matchup that I noticed that these two teams somewhat blueprint one another. They're not sitting too far rank-wise when it comes to their run-stop defense. They're not too far rank-wise when it comes to what their secondary can produce. And we obviously know they have 2 bullets at the helm when it comes to the quarterback position and 2 guys who can quickly get their feet in the mix. But clock management is going to be crucial. The geniusness of these head coaches is going to be crucial, and this is going to be an exciting game to get into tonight. Something else to keep in mind, we kind of gassed up what the Chiefs are going to be bringing into this matchup and how they've edged a number of times, but how about the fact that Baltimore has rallied at 11-6-0 record across the spread last season, or against the spread, I should say. I love saying across versus it, but Baltimore, as a 3-point underdog, went 2-1. So I know sometimes that's a big reason why people don't want to touch this spread. Then you're looking at the fact that Baltimore is probably going to use Derrick Henry as their workhorse tremendously, which is going to get us into a lot of red zone conversation. But most importantly, some tutty talk. And there's only one guy who can get us squared away when it comes to the touchdown conversation, some props, some tutties, and where you should lay your money. And I think it's probably time to talk to my buddy Adam Kaufman and see where he's guiding us, because I've got a few guys that stand out to me in this matchup, but I think that Kaufman's probably got even more players on mine that could really get the work done. Looking up some things, too, within the 20 mark, and I got to see what Kaufman has here.
Well, there's definitely some different places that I'm invested. Not so much on the anytime touchdown market, although I think there are some intriguing ones. I'm more looking at, obviously, some of the full game props or even reduced props that are options.
All right, before we get to some of the player prop bets and probably some first half looks, let's start kind of laying out who some of the top touchdown props are in the market currently. As I mentioned beforehand, you got Derrick Henry, the workhorse, coming over here. And something that stood out to me the most when it came to Henry and how he's going to help out the Baltimore offense is the fact that he has a 77.3 efficiency inside the 20-yard line, which means they're going to go to him quite a bit. Expectation is high for him to find the end zone. We're going to find him to find the end zone a number of times, but obviously don't want to go with the obvious look here, which is also probably why Lamar Jackson sits there high and tight. But let's see what Adam has to say in terms of if he has anyone in the player prop market to find the red zone or what's most attractive to him tonight. Adam? You got me?
Well, so you were just talking about Derrick Henry, and I do think that's obviously an appealing one.
I think we're having a little kind of audio issue. So yes, Derrick Henry sitting at the top of the charts when it comes to some props in the red zone. And then obviously right underneath him is going to be Travis Kelce. This is a guy who hits a high number of targets, but he's also probably going to want to make up for some lack of action last season. Last season, we saw a couple of drops, not specifically from Kelce, but we saw some heavy marking, some tough coverage for him to break out of. And yes, guys, I'll give him the fact that he was working through ankle issues and other situations, which means if you got a Travis Kelce with a chip on his shoulder coming into this season, trying to connect with his best buddy Patrick Mahomes, I think that's kind of a shoo-in when it comes to the tutty conversation. Isaiah Pacheco, he's somebody I kind of faded in terms of how much production he is going to draw into this season. Not because I don't think he's fantastic, not because I don't think he's helpful, because I think that Patrick Mahomes has found his new Hill, his new Tyreek Hill to be more specific. Picking up Xavier Worthy was a huge situation. The prototype is very similar to Tyreek Hill. Not to mention is that he's much faster than the cheetah is. So when you put that into comparison and think about Patrick Mahomes getting a speedster back who hopefully can contain the ball, then we're going to see some exciting things happen between Patrick Mahomes and Worthy. Then working down the line here really quickly, Rice. That's going to be a big one to take a gander at because you've got him sitting at one of the highest target rates and efficiency rates inside of that 20-yard mark. And I like this because if everybody gets locked up coverage-wise, you have the guys that you can rely on to reel in the ball and maintain. We saw some of that action in college football. I think we're going to see that between Patrick Mahomes and some of his top units tonight, which is why I'm probably over anybody else leaning towards Rice picking up some action. When you're talking about Rice's production rate inside of that 20-yard line, then you're looking at a 72% receiving percentage, but you're also looking at 46% target rate. And he's sitting right there with Travis Kelce when it comes to the opportunities of getting targeted. So when you're looking at Patrick Mahomes connecting between Rice and Travis Kelce, I think that we might see a lot more action out of Rice. I know a lot of people have Xavier Worthy on the books for them, and I've got some props in that first quarter that we'll talk about later on. Somebody else to keep an eye on in the red zone, and I know it sounds pretty crazy, the value comes in high, but it's going to be Justin Watson. Watson is somebody that Patrick Mahomes can go to really fast and easy if everybody is locked up. I've seen what Justin Watson can do for Tampa Bay, and I've seen how quarterbacks rely on him last minute. Yes, some drops last season, but that's something that he focused on in this offseason. But don't go anywhere because we've got to get into more Tutty Talk. We got to get to some yardage and talk to the rest of the gang down the stretch here on Pro Football Today. So go nowhere here on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Back at it with Pro Football Today as we get you all ready for tonight's showdown between the Ravens and the Chiefs. And let's not fool ourselves. The Ravens are getting a little bit more love, even though the nation knows or decides that they don't want to bet against Patrick Mahomes. So Now, as we decide to dive deeper into the touchdown prop conversation, we do have to talk about player props overall. And there's one guy who's going to get us situated when it comes to the yardage conversation, probably where the chain gang comes in. But let's talk with Tom Vecchio and see where he lies in terms of what he finds flattering tonight when it comes to the lines, where it comes to the yardage, where it comes to some player prop bets, so that you know how you should gauge heading into this matchup tonight. Do we have Tom really quick?
Yeah, I am excited to be here, not only for tonight, but for the entire season, doing the pregame show, the halftime, the postgame, Mondays and Thursdays, postgame on Sundays. We're obviously starting off the year with a great game, rematch of what we saw in the playoffs last year. Obviously, these two teams have gone at it plenty of times over the last few seasons. I think we're in for a lower scoring game, at least to start. I think it's going to be pretty scripted. So initially, I lean on the under, but as I spoke about with Ben and Donnie this morning on the early line, I'm particularly interested in a live over, especially if we do see a lack of scoring to start.
Oh, I love that. That's actually something that everyone should keep an eye on because, as I mentioned, this can get really messy really fast depending on how everything goes down. I know some people are considering really hammering the under because you got Pacheco, who should have a large role tonight, but then you've got Henry in the conversation. When you have a large run game, you slow down the clock. But let's talk some yardage. Let's talk some players that are going to really be monsters out there. They've got Juju Schuster on the Chiefs side, who is or has been known, Tom, to have those yak yards, that guy who can really reel it in and pick up those extra yardages. And then you've got, obviously, the role of what Derrick Henry should be tonight. But which players stand out to you the most in this matchup?
Yeah, Derrick Henry, and it probably wouldn't be his yardage prop, particularly high on his total attempts prop, which is sitting at 15.5. And that's kind of what the Ravens want to do. That's what they should have done in the playoffs. So just continuously give the ball to the running backs and control the clock, like you said. So we don't have to be too worried about efficiency in terms of him breaking off big runs. But over 15.5 rushing attempts is probably my favorite market for Henry tonight. Looking to Pacheco, I actually kind of like working towards him when it comes to the combined rushing plus receiving, because we know he'll be involved in the game regardless of the game script. If they happen to fall behind by a little, whatever amount, he's going to be out there catching passes. Maybe not at a super high rate, but he's still going to be involved. So, and if they're ahead, he's obviously going to be on the ground game, breaking off those big runs. So combined rushing plus receiving for Pacheco, and then probably rushing attempts for Derrick Henry.
I love that. Now, would you say I'm crazy because I was leaning towards rushing and receiving for Derrick Henry? Because sometimes when you get closer to the red zone with him, you see them pitch him the ball a little bit. I feel like they're going to try to have some fun, but maybe not too much fun because they want to win this one tonight.
Rushing plus receiving for Henry is probably not something I generally consider. Just because Justice Hill coming out of the back is probably going to be stealing the overall target shares in the year long. Like maybe not tonight, but overall in the season, it's probably going to be Justice Hill as the pass catching back. So Henry rushing plus receiving is probably not the spot that I would initially look.
All right, Tom. Well, good thing you and I get to chat all season long, but we can't really have a real conversation about this matchup without talking about Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And one of the most flattering or one of the most talked about props that was going around was the combination of both of these guys hitting over 450 combined passing yards. But Where do you stand on this one? Because some people are starting to drop Lamar's passing yards down under 250 because of what Henry should bring to the table.
Right, and that's also, I would say, what you expect from the game overall. So I'm leaning on the under overall. So if I'm leaning on the under, I probably wouldn't be looking towards the two quarterbacks combining for 450 yards because I want at least some level of correlation in my bets, because if these quarterbacks are passing for 400, 500 yards, we're probably looking at a game total that's flying over, right? So I don't want to be taking props on one side and then props over here that are essentially counterintuitive to what I'm expecting, on the other foot, essentially. So I don't mind it in theory, but I'm just not on that side.
Yes, I can understand where you're coming from on that one. Now, Flowers is probably obviously one of the main guys that's going to get some action when it comes to airing out the ball. But then you've got how much action is he going to get? Can he hit this over 51.5-yard proppage, or are we going to see a mix-up of some other things? Where do you see Flowers props lying for the night?
I love Zay Flowers. I loved him last year. I'm going to be big on him this year. You know, what it comes down to is the Ravens don't necessarily pass the ball at a super high rate. And generally when they do pass the ball, it's funneled to essentially two players. That would be Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. And we've known that. And, you know, they Rashad Bateman bringing him back this year. It's essentially the same receiving core that they had last year. So if we're going to be seeing passing volume from Lamar Jackson, it's going to be funneled to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, and that's where I would lie. So I would initially go to Zay Flowers in this game. There's some kind of questionable reports about Mark Andrews. He was on the injury report, but it was undisclosed. Then he's off the injury report. So I have some level of concern with Mark Andrews. I'm not saying it's very high, but it's something.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up because actually that's probably been the biggest question mark because when you're talking about them getting in difficult situations, there's that comfort between Jackson and Andrews, but his health has always been a question, at least in the past year. Also, his production rate inside of the 20-yard line is something that Jackson typically relies on. So would we stay clear of any props when it comes to Andrews tonight, just to let everyone know?
No, I think you could certainly look to him for a touchdown prop. Obviously, like you said, they get in the red zone. That's the bread and butter for them, getting him the ball 10, 12 yards out, whatever it might be. So I'm fine with a Mark Andrews anytime touchdown. Him having a massive volume of yards is a different story. I think both of those things can exist at the same time. He scores the touchdown, but maybe isn't breaking off an 80 or 90-yard game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that one. And then we've got to talk about the rookie on the Kansas side of the ball. Everyone's pretty excited for Worthy and what he may do. You might foresee him getting in the end zone, but what else you got on Xavier Worthy for tonight?
Yeah, big on Worthy. I think you could certainly look to not only his touchdown prop, which we can get into a little bit later, but probably the over on his yards. Ton of speed after the catch, getting the ball. Is over 3.5 receptions. I believe last time I saw I was thinking at plus 125 or so, plus 128. I think we're going to get involved nice and early.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get more into Xavier Worthy, Chiefs, and the Ravens showdown tonight. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on SportsGrid TV because Pro Football Today is going to continue to break down this exciting matchup on the other side of this quick break.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's like it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
welcome back into Pro Football Today. Kasey Hudson hanging out with Tom Vecchio because we've got to get you guys ready for the Ravens versus the Chiefs showdown. And Tom and I were actually just talking about this guy by the name of Xavier Worthy. We both mentioned the speed coming in, but that's obviously going to be a lot of fun for Patrick Mahomes and his backyard style of football and all the tricks that he can come out of his pocket with. And now he's got a speedster to match him. I feel like he missed Tyreek Hill. I feel like he missed that speedster that can meet him at the end of a route in particularly. Do you have that much faith in Xavier Worthy for game one?
I do. I don't want to say it's only due to the fact that there's no Hollywood Brown, but Worthy's a great talent. Like you said, he's got a tremendous amount of speed. It's something that they were, missing from their offense in some capacity last year. I think, we will see maybe a rekindled version of Patrick Mahomes with a Tyreek Hill-esque player, where we now have a consistent option underneath with Kelce, obviously developing the connection with Rice dating back to last year, but now adding in this new element of Worthy. And that's where I want to start this year. Worthy TD at plus 175. Yeah, there's no Hollywood Brown, and that is certainly a part of what I'm looking at. But in reality, he only has to compete for, I'm going to say, two other players when it comes to the top target share on the Chiefs, and we're getting him at the best number among them, not counting Pacheco, who I assume would be on the ground. But Worthy at plus 175, no pun intended, is worthy of being the top target share guy on the Chiefs. And I will take that compared to Rice or Kelce when we're getting him at the best number. So I'm big on Worthy. And if he continues to break out and there's no Hollywood Brown, this number is not going to stay at plus 175. Going forward, it's going to be plus 140, plus 130. And then at that point, I may not have a whole lot of interest.
Absolutely. And I am big on puns. So I think Worthy is worthy. He showed it during training camp. And you heard how the locker room talked highly of not only his development, but his understanding of the system and how quickly he was getting acclimated. And if we know anything, under Reed, players just flourish. They learn the game, and then they know how to capitalize. But speaking of, the guy who's going to help Worthy capitalize is going to be Patrick Mahomes. And you've got some props for us in terms of what the quarterback is going to produce tonight. What do you see when it comes to Patty?
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes over 37.5 passing attempts. It's sitting at minus 106. I would say passing attempts for quarterbacks. If you're going to be watching the show throughout the year, it's going to be a routine thing. I think passing attempts, they are easy to project. We can look at play calling tendencies. We can look at potential game script, game flow, these types of things. Quarterbacks and offenses generally operate, hopefully, under normal conditions, and they operate the way they should be in. Ultimately, for the Chiefs, when rubber meets the road, it's the ball in Mahomes' hands. They're not going to be handing it off. We look back over last 3 years, 5 years, whatever. The Chiefs are always in the top 10 league when it comes to pass play percentage. So that's what they're going to be doing. They're not going to be handing the ball off 35 times a game. That's just not the type of offense that they are. Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. They give him the ball. So passing attempts is something that are, again, highly projectable and are going to be a recurring thing, because if we have a super high over-under and a close spread, that means we're going to see this back and forth action, and that leads to the Mahomes passing the ball a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. And then within that, you and I kind of already talked about whether or not we'd hammer these guys combined hitting or touching 450. But you got Mahomes sitting at this 269. You mentioned an offense that airs out the ball. Is it something that you like the over or under on?
I don't take unders on Patrick Mahomes. He's a player like Luka Doncic or Jokic, that caliber of player, where I may not love his over, but I'm also never taking an under, because we know what he can do. He can fly to 250 yards in the first half if he wanted. So I would lean on the over, but it's just not one of my favorite bets for tonight.
I think that's a brilliant point to make. And then let's show some love for the Ravens side of the ball. You do have a wide receiver that you think is going to rack up some yardage. Talk to us about that.
Actually, the opposite. It's going to be a lack of yardage for Nelson Aguilar. It's under 14.5. It's a pretty thin line, but he's just not a dominant option in their offense, which is a run-first offense to begin with. As I spoke about, they are not a super high pass rate team. And when you look back to last year, again, they're returning the same receiving core essentially. He had a 9.6 target share last year. Flowers up at 24. Mark Andrews at 22. Bateman, who people think can break out this year, was at 12. Justice Hill was at 8.9 last year, and as a likelihood, do things in for a very nice season, was at 8.5. So at best, Nelson Aguilar is the fourth option in target share, when I think Hill and likely, especially likely, are going to be taking that step above him, which means he's going to be fifth on the pecking order. So Nelson Aguilar under 14.5 receiving yards.
Okay. I'm with you this much on that one. And yes, you are correct. I did misinterpret that. Not hammering the top, racking up yardage-wise, but definitely coming under. What I will say in terms of what they're expecting out of the Ravens offense and the versatility that they should be bringing to the table tonight. I will lean on the fact that I love that prop that you came up with when it comes to him. If you have to pick Chiefs, Ravens, who are you taking?
I have the Ravens +3. I think the under hits. Again, looking for a live over at like over 39.5.
All right. I actually really love that. But don't go anywhere. We've got more to get into here on Pro Football today on SportsGrid TV. One more quick break. Stay with us.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's like it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Back at it with Pro Football today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson hanging out with Tom Vecchio, and Tom's ran us through some great props that you guys should be eyeing before kickoff goes down. But speaking of kickoff, there is a small delay in warm-ups due to weather, but it wouldn't be football season without some weather delays and some other issues going on. But as I mentioned, Tom made some great points as to props that you should be looking in on. Also, some comes to both offenses. We got to get to the fun part, Tom. We got to talk. We have to have some tutty talk. And we got to see which guys might end up racking up or cashing out when it comes to getting in the end zone. When it comes to the Chiefs side of the ball, we'll focus offense by offense. When it comes to the Chiefs side of the ball, there's no Patrick Mahomes without Travis Kelce and vice versa. Now, I will say inside of the 15-yard line, Travis Kelce is a top target sitting at 81%. Does that make it a shoo-in to land some money with him in the end zone?
Probably. I think that's the answer for most Kelce bets, where the answer is like, yeah, if they operate normally, Kelce's probably going to be having a big game. The second question would be, do I like that touchdown number for Travis Kelce at plus 105? And my answer is no. That's just not a number. I think it's, far too low. It's just not a number I'm personally comfortable going with. I would prefer it was much higher, but we're never going to get it much higher. Right. So again, I like his, obviously skill to get there, but doesn't mean I'm willing to bet it every single time. I will say, as you noted, a little bit of rain that's delaying the game. That does impact how we may potentially be viewing this game if it is going to be a significant amount of weather.
Right, absolutely, because we start looking at more of a ground game from both sides, and then things start to alter in terms of seeing Patrick Mahomes air out the ball. But Again, a very skillful guy. It doesn't change too much, but it's definitely something to gear up and keep an eye on. Now, you make a great point as to Travis Kelce. I just need your general point on this. Maybe I'm just feeling some type of way because the Chiefs are always in the conversation of the championship. But do we see Travis Kelce not only with a chip on his shoulder, but being more productive this season? Some people say he was weathering injuries last year and kind of fell off a little bit. I don't know what to expect out of him this year. I don't have all that much faith. What do you think?
I think what we know from the Chiefs is they're built for the playoffs, and ultimately being healthy in December and January is the most important thing. So if you were to ask me, would Travis Kelce have a career season in terms of yards and touchdowns? My answer is probably no, given the fact that they added Worthy and Hollywood Brown will be back at some point. So ultimately, I want to say it's not that Travis Kelce is going to have a quote unquote bad year. It's just that he doesn't have to shoulder as much of a load on offense because Mahomes now has more options to work with. So they can actually ease off of needing to rely on Kelce to have 8 catches, 100 yards, just because he doesn't have to anymore. That doesn't mean he's in for a bad year. It just means that his role may be reduced because they have so many new options. And he'll be a bit more healthy for the playoffs. So I think that's like a reasonable take for Travis Kelce, and probably the way I'm going to be approaching him. He may not have these massive games anymore just because he doesn't have to.
Right. And a positive along those lines, Tom, is the fact that maybe value will increase when it comes to the touchdown conversation and Travis Kelce, but we've got to wait a couple weeks for that to play out. Now, another guy who's going to get a lot of loving in the red zone, hopefully, when it comes to the Chiefs offense is Rice. You're looking at somebody who is 76% efficient when it comes to receiving inside of that 15-yard line and targeted a little over 51%. Worth it for Rice.
Yeah, Rice would probably be the first player I would look at on that touchdown board of odds. I don't like going super low on touchdowns. They're highly variable. Even when we have great touchdown scores, they're only going to be scoring, 10 touchdowns or so a year. So I'm looking at a player that has a high target involvement. He's going to be used in the red zone. I was going to play a ton of snaps, running a ton of routes, all these sorts of things. And he's at a price that I actually like. So of those options, Rice from either team would be the first one that I would be considering tonight. So I'm fully on board with him scoring and that plus 160 for a touchdown. I think that's totally fine.
Big fan of that. And then, of course, one of the other guys' largest conversation for the Chiefs offense is going to be Pacheco. I kind of faded him a little bit depending on what this offense decides to do. You kind of touched on the fact that there's going to be more targets for this team to attack with, but he's sitting at an 85% when it comes to receiving inside of the 15-yard line, and he's also sitting at a target percentage of 46.7%. Can Pacheco find the end zone tonight, and is it worth it?
I think he does find the end zone tonight. I'm personally hoping he does, obviously on a number of different fantasy teams. But again, that's just not a number I'm super comfortable with. I would say any of these players that I don't love for a touchdown, if you want to take a smaller unit, a quarter unit sprinkle on a first touchdown or a first half touchdown, something along those lines, I think that's a fun way to get the season started, but they're just not a primary play for me tonight.
Yes, well, good luck with your fantasy team because I had to stop playing fantasy football. I was not a good sport when it came to guys not being able to play or hitting their yardages or finding the end zone. But I do want to see if you've got maybe an underdog that can get in the end zone for Kansas tonight. That's one of the brilliant things about Reed and company is that getting those other guys involved. Somebody that I've seen here and there has been Justin Watson. He did have some crucial drops last year, but I did see a guy named Tom Brady count on him in the Tampa Bay Bucs system. Is there anybody you think can sneak into the end zone worth keeping an eye on?
I believe Noah Gray for Kansas City. Didn't he just get an extension? If I remember, Schefter tweeted it just a little while ago. They got a 3-year extension. So let's roll with the narrative. You did a new contract, touchdown on opening night.
You're going to make some money off of it in a number of ways. And plus, some of these guys like to work in incentives in their contract. So if Gray got that extension, I'm sure that he's got all the motivation in the world. Now, let's flip offenses for a second. We got to find out who's going to find the end zone when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens. I know a lot of times, especially last year, the first guy that came to mind was Lamar Jackson. Loves to use his legs, gets out of the pocket very quickly. He tries to weather that pressure. Is that kind of an obvious shoe-in outside of the Derrick Henry conversation?
Yeah, of course. And looking to a touchdown for Lamar is, again, generally one of the things I think most people do. It's never sitting at my favorite number. I think you can certainly look there. Moving a bit further down the board for the Ravens, again, I'm always looking at the price. What's the first player I want to consider? That would be Zay Flowers. Again, high target share. We know he can get downfield. The weather, if that's going to start playing more and more of an issue, I think this is where I would shift to Mark Andrews being more of a primary option for me, just because we've spoken about his red zone usage, that consistent option for Lamar Jackson in the red zone. So, I want to say Flowers, but I would also say that Mark Andrews it's like a 1A, 1B type of scenario.
Yeah, now that we brought the weather into this conversation, I'm leaning more towards Andrews' action and what he's going to be able to produce. Inside the 15-yard line, you're looking at a guy who's targeted over 71%, so that's really attractive when you're looking at this matchup. Not to mention is that, Andrews has had some monster plays to come in through or in clutch, specifically for the Ravens roster. Also, they have tried to get a little flashy with him before and have him rush in a touchdown inside the 10-yard mark. So Mark Andrews is worth keeping a close eye on. Broadening the conversation as we continue to gauge the weather and see how that plays into anything. Does that make you look at some rush props when it comes to Lamar Jackson?
It would certainly turn me to rushing props for Derrick Henry. Like I said, over 15.5. I would have to double check to see if that number has moved up to 16.5. Then I would be much more interested in Henry's rushing yardage prop, which I said I was kind of lukewarm on at the beginning. But now, if there's going to be some significant amount of rain, sign me up for Derrick Henry carrying the ball 20 times a game. And that would have me much more interested in his rushing total.
Okay, so you already just gave fans something that they need to gauge as the game gets underway. Over 65.5 being more of a potential now with the weather going on. Also keep this in mind. Henry was averaging 68.8 rushing yards per game last year, and he's got a large workload on his shoulders now wearing a new, I almost said sweater. That's hockey talk for you, but now wearing a new jersey for the Baltimore Ravens. Anyone else that fans should be keeping a close eye on, or the weather can maybe help give them more role in the matchup?
I'm going to go back to Isaiah Likely. I think this is going to be a big year for him. I think we're going to see him emerge as the third option in target share for the Ravens. It's going to be Flowers, Andrews, Likely. So buying into Likely early, any and all options for him starting off, the first few weeks of the season.
Yes, actually, Likely's a guy that I think gets underrated quite a number of times when people start looking at these matchups. But we've got plenty of action to still get into, not to mention get everybody prepared for one of the biggest games as Week 1 gets underway. So go nowhere. Continue staying with us here on SportsGrid TV.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
They suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today on SportsGrid TV. Guys, I get to hang out with Dave Sheriffin for a minute, and I had to open up by apologizing, which I'm really good at apologizing. I'm not bad at
That's
apologies.
good.
Yeah, that's a
That's
good
really
trait
good.
to have, right? Mature.
Yeah.
My parents are proud. I had to apologize because Penn State, they didn't only just win, but they were aggressive, they were physical, they were psychotic, they were fun to watch, and I underestimated them on about 3 out of the 5 things I just named. So, congratulations, Dave.
It's fine. We'll take it as a W. It's really good. It's a really good thing to be able to apologize. Believe me, I live with a ocean of estrogen, and sometimes they don't always apologize. And I always look at everybody like, why is everybody so angry? Just say you're sorry and move on. It doesn't always work that way. It's fine. It's okay. We'll have college football, though, to talk about as we continue to do the shows this week. Tonight, we got to focus on the game because
got a new
they
hat
put
on.
us together to talk about, the
Exactly.
Chiefs, right? So we got to talk about the Chiefs and the Ravens. And man, oh man, this is a fun game. One of those ones that you give the NFL a lot of, crap for certain things, but they got this one right. Nothing better than the Chiefs Super Bowl champs against the Ravens, who, are going to be the team that everybody's talking about to challenge them for the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
First game, standalone game on a Thursday. And then just like when the audio doesn't work or you're fixing your hair or something, you get a lightning strike outside and everything's delayed. Everything, like, you don't plan for these things.
Nope.
And it's one of those, so I'll ask you this, Case. When you hear that, what do you think? Do you think under? Do you think over? Do you think that affects the side? If there be bad weather, what is your first impression?
Well, I mean, years and years and years of not only watching football, but sitting at games for hours and hours on end. Immediately you hear rain, then you go to the under because you got to protect the ball. But you do have 2 grade A quarterbacks here competing for different reasons. Patrick Mahomes going for the 3P. Lamar Jackson wanted to be taking more seriously. I mean, you've got MVP versus reigning Super Bowl champion. So you got 2 guys that I think are more fearless when it comes to probably still airing out the ball. The trust is probably going to be more on the Chiefs side in terms of making those connections. But I was with the under before all of this action. Now I'm even more on it because we probably are going to see a lot more of the ground game be relied on with the weather delay. And we don't know how much more the weather delay is going to intensify. As you mentioned, lightning is now coming down.
Exactly. And that's what everybody does in the book. They log onto their app. They used to rush to the counter, like here in Vegas, and go, "Oh, they're clearing the field, or there's going to be rain, or they show the shot of the game, And in the winter, there's snow all over, which you're going to get used to, Casey. I'm telling you, you're going to get used to the snow now that you're, up in New Jersey. I promise you. But the rain, the lightning, everybody bets the under.
Right.
What?
I said, here's hoping. Actually, I do have a question for you, Dave, because you're mentioning the book.
Yep.
You're mentioning what people do when they see weather delay and how everybody just kind of runs to the under and expects this ground game to be the thing. But just because somebody decides to focus on their ground game doesn't mean that they can't rack up points. And you're talking about 2 defenses that ranked 16 and 17 when it came to their run-stop defense last year. So is the panic really worth it to hit the under, or are these 2 teams that can maybe rack up on the yardage on the ground?
Well, the other thing that the weather means is turnovers, right? So you can get turnovers that would cause the game to go over. But yes, you can get, there's a chance or 2 during the game that they're going to break off, run, and get a quick score. And I don't know. I think we recency bias is that primetime unders went way under last year. A lot. So we got a primetime game shaded to the under. Now the possibility of weather being an issue, and it's a deluge of money on the under. It's just one of those things that the book just sits there and takes the bets. We sit behind the counter and just go, just keep coming. It's fine. It's okay. I think it's such an overreaction. And you said it, like, there's a way for this game to go over if you know which way it is. Which one do you think? Which team has more success on offense?
Ooh, I'm going to go in terms of like statistically. I know this is going to be a hot take. I'm going to go with the Ravens only because what the expectation is for Henry getting sorted in this system. And it's not just what he could probably produce on the ground. We're talking about a guy that is pretty fearless when it comes to pass catching, also averages a number of catches throughout a game as well. So I feel like between Lamar Jackson loving a chance to use his legs and Derrick Henry supposed to have a tremendous workload on his shoulders tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if statistically we see more offensive power out of the Ravens versus the Chiefs.
Fair. I think you'll get a really good two-way action on that. Or I think some people will tell you it's Kasey, it's Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. It's Travis Kelce. Right? Like, so I think you'll get pushback, but that's okay. That's what makes, this business, and the book take bets on both sides. And I don't know. I was talking to my guy Carver earlier today, and man, he threw one out at me. He said, Kelsey's catching a touchdown. He just automatically said, the way things work out, they're going to drive down there. They may stall just inside the 10. They always find a way to get Kelce the ball. So I think he scores. I agreed with Mike with that one. I think we're going to see maybe a slow start in the first half and then more points in the second half. That's also another bet. You can bet whether there be more points in the first half or the second half. And you get it's a bone of contention between the sharp guys, all the rhombuses and parallelograms. They like to have the first half. Some guys think the first half scores more. I think second half tonight we'll get more points.
I actually like that that's where you went because I wasn't trying to show my hand until all of us got to talk about our betting cards, which is coming up. But I do have a lot of love for the Kansas City Chiefs in the first quarter because statistically they have dominated the first quarter in this matchup each time. So you kind of already laid the groundwork for that, but that's just one of, I think I have 5 best bets for tonight, but we've got to get everybody's best bets for tonight. We've got to get more updates on what's going on with the weather and what to expect, which means you go nowhere. Stick with us here on SportsGrid TV. We got a quick break.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Try and set the stage for what should be a great year of NFL action.
There's a handful of teams that potentially can compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Confusion and uncertainty this year more than some in the past.
This team looks like it's ready to make a move, but we just don't know if it's bad or good this year.
J.J. McCarthy is eventually going to take over, but it's a no-lose situation for them.
I mean, they suck. They were 7-10.
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes!
Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Welcome back into Pro Football Today here on SportsGrid TV. And Dave and I were just chatting about maybe some alternative things to take a look at because we're still looking at this weather delay between this matchup. We're trying to figure out which offense is going to be more potent within the weather delay. Dave, but I was actually just picking your brain during the break. Would you look at any alt totals? And you were saying going higher. I was saying possibly going lower. Where are you leaning?
Yeah. See, this is why I feel like, the first time we did a show, you asked about vibe, and I feel like we vibe every time we talk. I like this. You're looking go down with the number and go over, and my first thought is always to go higher with the number and go under. Right. So I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere, Kasey. If you like the over, for you, do you need to go all the way down to like 39? Do you want to take it down to that so we like 40 gets you the winner? But there's a lot of juice involved with that if you do that.
Yeah, 38.5, 39.5. I wouldn't go below either of those.
Okay.
And right now, in terms of hitting the over on 38.5, 39.5, you're looking at values and numbers such as minus 340 and minus 295.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, if you need to move it that far, you could do a teaser. And if you like a side, I think if you like the over, you take Baltimore up. If you think they're going to lose by 9 points or less, you can catch them. Well, at 2.5 now, you'd be getting 8.5 if you did a 6-point teaser. But you could take Baltimore plus 8.5, then use the total down to 40.
All right.
So, and that price is only minus 140. Like a lot of 2-team teasers, I'm old, but I remember when 2-team teasers at 6 points were even. They're way more expensive now. The books have gotten keen to allowing too many side to total teasers. So would that interest you? I mean, do you think this I'll ask you this, Case. What would surprise you more? A Kansas City win by, say, more than 7 points, or a Baltimore outright win?
I guess I might have to say a Baltimore outright win would surprise me.
Okay.
Like I said, if we're looking at things changing up because of the weather, and you're looking at two defenses that aren't too keen on stopping the run game, then I don't love the idea of over a touchdown. And last time these two teams met, what was it, just within a touchdown? You got a Ravens team that has to come in with stronger play calling and be a lot more efficient, and actually probably, in my personal opinion, has a lot more pressure on their shoulder to produce tonight.
Okay, that's fair. So Baltimore needs a game more, and it would surprise you more to have a blowout. So a teaser we might have just talked ourselves right into a same game teaser where you take the Ravens plus the points, plus 9, and go over the 40. Cost wise, it is two things, but it's only minus 140 rather than you taking that alt total and having to lay 380.
Right.
Now that you got to get the car fixed and everything else, we're trying to save you some cash. So you don't want to lay the worst prices.
I still got to buy snow tires too, so let's keep me in good standings here.
You better do that. Yeah,
yes.
You better make sure you do that. Do it now before they increase the prices as the weather starts to get cold. So buy those now, just like buying futures in the book.
Right.
If Baltimore wins tonight, their Super Bowl future price is going to come down. If you like Baltimore and
I think Dave was giving us some insight on where the value may lie when it comes to the futures. But speaking of, say things do go well for the Baltimore Ravens tonight, and as I mentioned, there feels to be like there's a lot of pressure for them specifically, then you're looking at the values switching up when it comes to the Ravens, not only sitting top of their division and conference, but heading into a potential Super Bowl. So right now, where the Ravens stand when it comes to Super Bowl is at plus 1,100. They're only 2 slots behind the Kansas City Chiefs. So where was I going with that? That there's value for the Baltimore Ravens coming in, yeah?
I don't know. We were having so much fun. We froze. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. It's fine.
You were just dropping so much knowledge. That's what it was. Let's keep it real simple. Who are you going with? Baltimore or the Chiefs tonight?
I don't love it, but I gotta lean to Kansas City. I think Kansas City wins tonight. So if I had to play it, I would lay it. but
Everyone
not,
says
I'm not really
to
liking
go
it.
against Mahomes, but I'm not going to bet against Dave. So there you go. Me not betting against Dave, especially not 2 weeks in a row. We got a lot more action to get into before pregame gets going, and hopefully the weather delay lifts up. So go nowhere. Stick with us here on Sports Grid TV.